Um, I'm also kind of thinking about why we're having this conversation now and why there are many conversations like this taking place at the moment. I'm also reflecting on a bit of imposter syndrome in myself in terms of having this discussion as a man, having this discussion. And it's certainly not a conversation I would have felt comfortable with having. Well, actually, prior to our discussion that we had a few weeks ago, and I wonder kind of what's in the air, what's in the kind of what's the context you think for these discussions now coming to the forefront?
Well, firstly, let me say I think it's amazing that we're having this conversation now, and thank you. And I don't have a problem. I don't think it's strange that you're a man. I think it's amazing that you're a man, and that you're open and happy to have this conversation. And that needs to, a lot of the men that I've worked with, so I've done management training sessions and awareness training sessions where there have been men in the room, and they've often been the most positive and the most enlightened, and oh my goodness, I can now go home and save my marriage because I now know what's going on, or oh wow, I get what my daughter's going through. It's it is important. It's very important. And I've also got some training tomorrow at Mid Kent College, and from what I can see from a pre-questionnaire that I've done with them, there is a man coming along who wants to be a menopause champion, which is fantastic. So that's great. It's really good to hear. So why are we talking about it now? Because menopausal women are the fastest growing demographic in the workplace. Because in FE, 60% of the workforce is female. And I don't have an overarching statistic, but from the work that I've done with the colleges and training providers I've worked with, average age of their staff is around 46. So, you're ticking all of the boxes there for menopausal women being in the workforce. And just something I just want to say now, every woman will experience menopause differently. Some people may sail through it and not even notice it's happening. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you've got very, very challenging experiences. So this isn't going to impact on everybody. I think the conversation, for me, this started in when I was 46, so 2016. And at the time, there wasn't really much noise about it. No one was really talking about it. I'd never spoken about it before. My mum had a surgical menopause, so she had a hysterectomy, and we talked about it a little bit, but not really. And I struggled to find information. I went online, and there was just so little, apart from the kind of the facts on the NHS website. And I ended up finding someone in New Zealand who was a sports coach originally, who'd retrained in women's aging, and I for my own lifestyle and kind of benefit did some training with her and understood sort of better what was going on for me. But until Davina McCall reared her head in 2021 and did a couple of documentaries on TV and basically just blew the lid off it, that's when everybody started talking about it. And now there is a lot of conversation about menopause, particularly on social media. It's starting to appear in mainstream news quite a lot, not always positive. More people are talking about it, but then I have to sense check and say, well, actually more people at my age, I see white women and my age women talking about it. I'm having conversations with anyone I can about it, but actually it's still very taboo in a lot of different places. In lots of workplaces it's taboo, in lots of cultures it's taboo, and menopause, women from different races and backgrounds will experience menopause differently. So that's something we need to be mindful of. But it's why is my generation of women kind of shouting about it? Because we live a fast-paced life, because it's a 24/7 culture, because our stress levels are probably higher than they've ever been. And this is everybody, but when you add menopause into the mix, people are kind of that sandwich generation of looking after children and looking after aging parents. The demands on women are high, and then you add menopause into the mix, you add what is potentially a plethora of symptoms into the mix, and then life becomes very, very difficult. And I feel it's my responsibility, because I'm kind of on the other side of it now. The symptoms haven't gone, but I'm postmenopausal. I think it's my responsibility to help the generations of women coming through, and not just women, but everybody, to understand kind of what's going on, and that's why we need to talk about it.
But talking about it is only part of it, isn't it? And I think that if we're not careful, we can say we've had the conversation, now we can move on to the next thing. So I suppose my question is, so what should organisations, obviously we've got a keen interest in the FE sector, but what should organisations in our sector and its leaders be doing to actually support women leaders? What could we be better at? What does best practice look like?
So I think as a sector, if we're talking about FE and skills, let's do that, and that's translatable then to any other sector. It's about recognizing that menopause might be an issue, and it might be an issue for your organization. It might impact on your organization moving forward if retention and recruitment becomes a challenge, and the actual performance of women within that organization. But it's also an issue for the women within the organisation, and for women's health, physical health, mental health. Mental health is a really big one. High rates of suicide for menopausal women, and so recognising that it might be an issue, understanding the size of the problem. So by that, I don't mean, you can try and ask the people in your organisation if menopause is impacting them, but you won't get everyone being honest with you. And that's another thing that we need to talk about, is fear of speaking up. But also just looking at your demographics, what is the potential? How many women might, and I talk about women, and I generalise by talking about women. There are other individuals who will go through menopause, some transgender men, intersex women, anyone basically who has reproductive organs will go through menopause. So it's understanding those demographics. What is the potential size of the issue in my organisation? Understand that. If you're a small business with all men, self-identified as men, and they're all 25, then likely not going to have a problem. But so understand the size of the problem, and don't make the mistake that thinking if no one is talking about menopause in the organisation, no one is coming to you and saying I'm struggling, no one is saying I need help, that doesn't mean you haven't got a problem, because at the moment people aren't really talking about it. I'm talking about it, and when I go into organisations, people talk about it to me because they feel safe, but a lot of women aren't talking about it with their managers, and with colleagues more so, but they're not putting their head above the parapet because they're scared, they're worried what the reaction's going to be. In some organisations that might be that there's going to be people laughing at you or saying derogatory things. In other organisations it might just be that you're putting yourself at risk, that you're saying I'm struggling, I'm struggling to remember things, I'm struggling to get through a day without being exhausted, I can't get all of my work done. What does that mean? Does that mean you won't be offered a promotion? Does that mean you might actually be demoted? They might think that they're being kind to you. Okay, well, Mary's really, really struggling at the moment, let's actually give her an easier role. Is that the right answer? Possibly not. And know what your legal requirements are. It fits within the Equalities Act, and you need to understand where it sits within that. And I would ask organisations to think outside the box, not just to accept that we've always done things this way. So yeah, okay, well, we'll give you a desk fan that will help with your hot flushes, and we'll put you in an office next to the toilets because you tell me that you need to pee every 5 minutes. It's actually, I can see you're really struggling in the mornings. I've got you, if you're I don't know, you might be a leader with teaching responsibility. Actually, you're really struggling to get going in the mornings. Let's just take you away from that first lesson of the day for a month, for a term. Let's be radical and change this, and then see what happens. We've got to start thinking differently. We can't just make tiny changes. Tiny changes won't be enough. It has to be different.